morning everyone, this is Uncle Sam again, and today we'll be discussing something called Bagicha Time or Tea Garden Time or Chai Bagan Time as it's known in this part of northeastern India. I'm now presently sitting in a tea garden in northeast India, and it's about 6:50 a.m. in the morning, and the sun is already way up in the horizon, and the pluckers are in the fields plucking fresh tea leaves from the tea bushes. And even though in the entire country we have one single time called the IST or the Indian Standard Time, and right across from Gujarat to northeast India and from Jammu and Kashmir to Kanyakumari, the entire country has one clock and one time. But it is not so in these tea plantations in Assam. And way back from the time of the British Raj, we have been following so-called illegal or everyone does it time zone parallelly with the Indian Standard Time, and this was basically done for the benefit of the industry as a whole, and it is still being practiced in certain tea gardens in Assam even today. And I would like to highlight you people of this practice of Bagicha Time and the effects and how it all started. So let's go on and get some insights. To understand the Bagicha Time system, you first need to understand the strange geographic fact about India, and that it is too far wide to have one single time zone for the entire country. So it stretches for about 2,900 kilometers across from its westernmost point in Gujarat to its easternmost point in Arunachal Pradesh. So the east-west distance covers about 29 degrees of longitude, and which means that the sun rises and sets about 2 hours before or after at the easternmost tip compared to the western tip of the country. And yet the entire country of 1.4 million people are following a single time zone. Does it make sense? I don't know. System, because the entire country would go haywire if we had 2 different or 3 different time systems. However, for the tea gardens in the northeast, we had this system called the Bagicha Time. So the IST is calculated based on the line of longitude of 82 degrees 30 minutes east, which passes near Mirzapur in Uttar Pradesh. And this was basically taken as the median of the entire country, and it was set up way back in 1905. And the country decided to take this as the Indian Standard Time for the entire country. Possibly it makes sense to have a single time for the entire country. However, when you compromise, you have costs. And Assam especially, the cost shows up every morning and makes a huge difference because of this difference in time zone compared to the actual time. This isn't a fringe complaint either. In fact, the Chief Minister of Arunachal Pradesh, Mr. Pema Khandu, in one of his meetings, had stated that people in Arunachal Pradesh wake up as early as 4 a.m. in the morning, and they lose several hours of daylight when the offices are closed till 10 a.m. So, and it turns out that something needed to be done about these loss of sunlight hours for the state. However, before all these governments and ministers had come in, the tea gardens in Assam had already started this practice about 150 years ago, and they had their own time zone to say, and they had their own local time or Bagicha Time, which was about 60 minutes ahead of the Indian Standard Time. So to give you an example of how the compromise looks like, imagine an office in Guwahati starting at 10 a.m. in the morning, whereas our sunrise takes place between 4:30 and 5 in the morning during summers, and about 5:30 and 6 in the morning during winters. So by the time the office has opened and the first file gets stamped, you have lost almost 5 hours of your sunlight hours. Again in the evening, since we are way ahead in time compared to west, so our sunset takes place about 4:35 in winters, and again you're losing daylight hours, and by the time you get back from office, it's already dark, so you cannot carry on with your normal day-to-day work. So for a state like Assam, it looks like we have one good arm tied behind its back, and we have to work based on the clock of the entire country. But in doing so, we're losing a lot of sunlight hours in our day-to-day activities. So to actually learn about the Bagicha Time, we have to go back to the start of the Assam tea story as such. And in 1823, a British officer by the name of Robert Bruce came across some wild tea plants growing in Upper Assam. And actually, wasn't a discovery of tea at all. Singpho and the Kamti communities were already drinking tea made from these tea leaves. And it was the Singpho chief, Besagam, who introduced this tea to Robert Bruce. And he realized that this was similar to teas produced in China. However, this was the Assam variety, and it was from the Assam tea plant as compared to the Chinese tea plant. So what happened next moved very fast. So in 1837, the British commercial tea garden was established in Chabwa, and the Assam Tea Company was formed in 1840, and that started the large-scale production of tea on a commercial level as compared to the cottage-level tea industry, which was being run by the Singphos and the Kamtis for their personal consumption. So when the first tea auction of Assam tea happened in 1939 in London, 12 chests of Assam tea was packed and sent and auctioned in London, and they got record prices, and that was enough to prove that Indian grown tea was as good as the Chinese tea, and there was a very viable option of making teas in Assam, and it looked as a very viable and profitable venture for the Britishers. So whenever you see the scope of a viable industry coming up in an area, the funds will start flowing in and companies will be formed and plantations will be made. So that's exactly what happened for Assam. And once the tea sold at those record prices in the London auction, the Britishers realized that there was a lot of scope for tea in Assam. The capital started pouring in, a lot of companies were formed, and these companies started plantations of tea by uprooting forests and clearing forests and acquiring new land areas. And now they came into the problem about labor. So what they did was they got labor from places like Jharkhand, Bihar, parts of Orissa, and also some parts of Andhra Pradesh. So these laborers were brought in, and then law like the Inland Immigration Act of 1863 was used, where magistrate had the powers to retain and arrest and get the labor back to the tea gardens if he somehow tried to leave. So these laborers were forced and kept in the tea gardens and were made to work, and it was certainly some amount of exploitative by nature. But however, when the industry comes up and when there's money to be made, these kind of things happen, and it happened in those days, and that's how the tea industry started in Assam. So for this Bagicha time to happen and to be used in the tea gardens, there was no official order. There was no law created to allow this kind of timing. However, these gardens being in far-flung areas and very far off from actual major towns and cities, they enjoyed this facility, and they had their own time zone. And I wouldn't say it was illegal, but again, it was against the nature of the Indian Standard Time that was set up. And since they benefited out of this change in time by 60 minutes, they carried on with it, and it stuck, and it carried on for more than 150 years. And there were no complaints on either side, either from the laborers or from the management side. So it was a profitable situation for both sides. So they followed it, and it is still followed in certain gardens today. However, having two time zones again causes certain problems and certain issues. So inside the garden, you had a clock which was 1 hour ahead of the Indian Standard Time. Now, inside the garden, everything was fine. So it worked like clockwork. What was supposed to start at 8 a.m. started at 7 a.m. What was supposed to finish at 4 p.m. finished at 3 p.m. So it was very nice and subtle inside the tea garden. But now imagine a person has to catch a bus from, say, the nearest city. So now he has to leave 1 hour early to be there on time to catch the bus, because his clock is 1 hour early. So he has to match. So it was a very balancing act for the garden workers and the garden management, because the officers and the bus timings and the train timings were as per the Indian Standard Time and not as per the local time of the tea gardens. So there was a lot of juggling to be done, but however, they got through with it, and they somehow got used to it, and then in their systems came into place where they would not, it would not, their timing in the garden and the timing in the offices would not clash. And they got used to it that everything for them started 1 hour early and everything for the others in the main cities around started 1 hour later. You might be thinking that 60 minutes is not too much of a time. And, even though it was practiced 150 years back, it had been through 2 world wars and through independence and then through the digital age, and it's still continuing. So why is there so much of a fuss about the 60 minutes of difference in an industry like tea? So 1 hour of actual more daylight culminates to more amount of plucking by the pluckers, and it's not about just the convenience. It is about added profits and added hours for the tea company as such. The tea quality, you need to pluck the tea leaves fresh, and the cooler the temperature, the better it is. That's been seen through the ages. So this 1 hour again made a difference in the tea quality also. So technically what happened was the leaves were plucked earlier in the earlier part of the day and in the cooler part of the day, and they came to the factory fresher and cooler. So the teas produced were much better in quality. And short daylight windows again had problems about your sleep cycles also. So the worker, instead of going home at 5 in the evening, he could leave at 4. So he had another maybe 1.5 hours of daylight. And since he was home earlier compared to the Indian Standard Time, so he would sleep early and then next morning he would wake up early. So the entire system was taken ahead by 16 minutes. That made a difference not only in quality, in productivity, but it made a difference in the health and well-being of the workers also, because their sleep cycles were better. They got more sleep and they could work better and they were more efficient. And as you know that once you adjust your daylight hours by 1 hour, so basically your lighting needs at night goes down also, because then you sleep earlier and you have lesser amount of lighting. So the energy wasted if you followed the Indian Standard Time was lower if you followed local time, which was earlier by 60 minutes. Now we're talking about the local time or the Bagicha time, which the tea industry adopted, and they gained by way of productivity, by way of quality. And with a similar angle, if you look at the entire Northeast as such, since the other industries or the other parts of the Northeast still follow the Indian Standard Time, it has been estimated that we lost about 25 years of productivity in those 150 years. And if we continue the same, following the Indian Standard Time, we lose in about 54 years by the next century. So it is very difficult to estimate the actual amount of loss. But as you know, that in any industry, especially Northeast being more of agriculture-based industry, losing sunlight hours amounts to huge losses in terms of productivity, in terms of efficiency, and it is a point where people need to think about that. If we actually in the Northeast had a local time which was 60 minutes ahead of IST, I know there would be problems about your flight timings, your train timings. How can you cross from one zone to the other and have a different time as such? But maybe for overall industry and the overall other businesses, barring the transportation and the train timings, if we could have local time of 60 minutes of timing ahead compared to the Indian Standard Time, we would definitely benefit from more hours, more sunshine hours for working. And, imagine like you have sunrise at 4 a.m. and then you're going to office at 10 a.m. So we've lost 6 hours of sunlight hours. Whereas a similar person in say Mumbai goes to office at 10, his sunrise is about 6:37 in the morning. So we just lost 3 hours. So we are way behind in terms of losing actual effective sunlight hours because of this disparity in the actual sunrise and sunset timings compared to the Indian Standard Time. So Tinsukia, which is on the eastern part of Assam, sits about 1400 kilometers off New Delhi, and they share the same time zones. And if you look on the other side, Bangkok in Thailand is about 1400 kilometers from Tinsukia. and it is 1.5 hours ahead of the Tinsukia time, which is the IST. So technically, Thailand being 1.5 hours ahead of Tinsukia is gaining more daylight hours. Similarly, if Tinsukia could have gained 1.5 hours compared to Delhi, they would have more sunlight hours for their working hours. And this absurdity was solved by the tea industry 150 years back, and they followed it and they were very successful in it. However, the other per se industries and the agriculture timings could not be followed in the similar manner. So that's why I was saying that we lost a lot of productivity hours over the last decade or so. So this local timing is not just about the tea industry. In fact, a lot of other people also have thought about having different time zones in a country like India, which is very wide, and there's a huge difference in sunrise and sunset times between the west and the east. In fact, the CSIR and National Physical Laboratory and the National Measurement Institute had proposed a formal splitting of India into time zones of 5.5 hours plus of UTC, the bulk of the country, and a second of 6 hours plus UTC for the northeast. However, even after their proposal, there was nothing which was done, and no action was taken. And again in 2001, the government set up a 4-member committee to study the same question, and then again it was repeated in 2017 by the Department of Science and Technology. It said it was looking into the matter, but there was no decision taken as to splitting of the time zone for the country. Assam, in fact, gave the biggest push for a different time zone during the under tenure of late Chief Minister late Tarun Gogoi. He had campaigned for a different time zone for Assam and Northeast. And he had put up a proposal with the central government to have different time zone for Assam and Northeast to help the productivity issues and the sunlight issues. And he cited the example of the tea gardens who were very successful in having a different time zone and getting benefits out of the extended sunlight hours. However, there was no such action taken by Delhi, and still we sit on the same issue as having one single time for the entire country. And Northeast loses out the most because we are the farthest from the western part of the country. So the Bagicha time was not a law, not a policy. It was just a habit that had been formed to outsmart the system around. So it was followed for the last 150 years, and certain gardens are still following it now. And it definitely has its advantages. And way before the government had any thought about having a separate time zone for the Northeast, the tea gardens of Assam had a much far-sighted view, and they decided to follow the system of Bagicha time, which is 60 minutes ahead of the Indian Standard Time. And they have been successful in using it for their benefits, and it has helped in their productivity and overall financial health of the industry. And now in the Northeast, with a lot of foreign investment coming in and with a lot of industries coming in, I feel that this thought of having a local time for this part of the country would again crop up. And there would be a lot of activists and persons involved who would suggest that this kind of a timing would help and aid these new industries to take benefit of the early sunrise and early sunset timings of this part of the country. And on a lighter note, when anyone comes to you next time and tells you that India runs on one clock and it is just one country, one time, you can always go back and tell them that no, there are parts of India, especially in Assam, especially tea gardens, follow their own time, which is called the local time or Bagicha time, which is about 60 minutes ahead of the Indian Standard Time, and has been followed for more than 150 years successfully and with great commitment. Thank you so much.